Hey, boys and girls. So, hey, guys, we're going to go ahead and talk about today's or this week's assignment. Your assignment for this week is all about the energy in ecosystems. Last week, you learned about ecosystems and those biotic and abiotic factors and how they play a role on each other. And we talked about population growth and how birth rates and death rates and the pressures on the ecosystem can play a role in those populations. This week, we're going to talk about that energy. And there's this huge concept. It's called the conservation of energy. And it's this idea that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only changes forms. If you notice, I just noticed my cat is running around the back. We don't normally let her in the house, but she's enjoying this. So wave hi to my cat. No. Okay, so energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes forms. And you probably learned a lot about that last year in your physical science class, whether it be light energy or heat energy or friction energy. There's also this thing called chemical energy, and that's the stuff that we eat. Chemical energy fuels our body to do work. And so we're going to talk about how is it that energy transfers in an ecosystem, because it's never created and never just comes to be. It's transferred from place to place, and it's used to grow and maintain and do all these sort of tasks that we need it to do. So let's go ahead and begin with from the beginning. This engage portion with the frog is asking kind of what do you already know? And so there's no right and wrong answer. I'm trying to cue in and see what are your thoughts on this. If you're not sure how to edit that picture, click on the tutorial and it'll show you how. As I scroll down the page, one of the things you're going to notice is I've got this kind of thinking smiley face little emoji guy. Okay. Anytime you see one of these, that's your cue. I want you to do some writing. I need you to answer that question in an actual sentence and challenge yourself. I want complete sentences. Oh, we are so close to high school, and like 1-word, 2-word answers ain't going to cut it. Do the work right, okay? Next, as you move on to the vocab section, just like last week, you get to see my really sweet professional videos that are going to blow your mind. If you are not ready to have your mind blown, that's okay. You don't have to watch them. You can go ahead and as you scroll down to the text down below, you'll find the definitions embedded in there in the reading. So as long as you can decipher the definition, that's cool with me. Plug in a picture you think is appropriate, and we're good to go there. So as I scroll down, the next section is our explore or our reading portion. Just like last week, I recorded myself doing the reading if that's something you're interested in. If you're not, please do not feel obliged to listen to me talk more. I mean, I bet some of you feel like it's a blessing not to hear me talk recently. Okay, so, but if you want to, go ahead and listen to the voice recording. And then I recommend you have 2 screens open and you can kind of read along as I read the words out loud, especially if you're kind of concerned and not really sure how some of these scientific terms are pronounced. All right. So basically, this portion is talking about the different roles in ecosystems and some of those vocab words being producer and consumer. And this might be a lot of review for many of you guys. Okay, when you get to this part where it says, check out this video about hagfish, do it. Hagfish, man, if you're curious, you can research on your own too. They are disgusting and amazing. They're really cool. It's worth it. As I keep scrolling down the text, I see another one of these kind of thinking emojis, and that tells me you got to answer that question in a complete sentence. Next, you're going to go ahead and label out some of the different roles in this picture. And so you want to think about who's eating what. And if you're curious at all or confused, click that tutorial to hear a little more detail about that section. So as we continue moving down, it's going to talk about food webs and food chains and the difference between the two. And here's one part I think you might have questions about. It says, what are some limitations of modeling the flow of energy and matter in an ecosystem with a food chain? So what it's really asking is, remember that energy, that chemical energy, is stored inside of living things. And when you eat something that was once living, you then get to use that energy in your body. It transfers to you. And so they're asking what limits or what kind of flaws or problems might there be when modeling that flow in a food chain versus maybe in a food web? Why might it not be a great option to use a food chain as your model? So hopefully that helps you kind of process and think through how you're going to answer that question. As I continue scrolling, the next part is talking about this food web right here. You're going to go ahead and click on it, and then you're going to type in the names. If you have questions, watch that tutorial. Finally, the text starts talking about energy pyramids. And so they're talking about how is that energy that's stored inside of those living things transferred to the next level as it's being consumed? How is that energy transfer happening? And so as you read through, that's really mainly what we're getting at there. This is that energy pyramid, and it's showing us that we measure energy in something called kilocalories. So when you pull up your Sprite or your Coke, and you look at the calories on there under the nutrition information, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, you're not actually looking at calories, you're actually looking at kilocalories. So you actually have to add like 3 more zeros on the end, and that's how we scientifically measure the amount of energy that's stored inside of that food source. So it's like how we use inches to talk about length, but in science, we actually use centimeters. So if you want to think about it like that, in a scientific way of looking at it, we should actually be talking about kilocalories, not just calories. Okay, the math toolbox, you betcha. You got to do the math toolbox this time. There's a tutorial on how to do this and what's expected. It's actually not very difficult math. It's actually pretty simple math. So watch a tutorial if you're a little bit uneasy or unsure of what the task is. Okay, for this red section, the explain part of this assignment, I want you to explain all of your answers in complete thoughts and complete sentences. So number 1 says, which model best illustrates the flow of energy and matter in an ecosystem? Is it a food chain or a food web? Well, we touched on this a second ago, so hopefully you should be able to come to the correct conclusion here. But you don't want to just give me a one word or it's a food chain if you think that's the right answer. Okay, I want you to explain your thought, explain what you're thinking, which means that you need to put a little bit more like that because statement. I think this, or this is the correct answer because, and that helps explain your thought. All right, for the apply section, you're going to go ahead and apply what you understand about these vocab words, these terms, these ideas to a few situations. So looking at this picture, we're picking out the abiotic and biotic factors. And then we're going to go ahead and continue on. Oops, I went too far. Okay, this portion, it's talking about a food web, which is another, we did a food web a minute ago. And so for this food web, you're going to try to pick out what are the roles in the ecosystem? Who's the carnivore? Who's the herbivore? And if you look at the animal and you're like, I have no idea what that animal eats, then that's okay because the arrows tell you. It goes from food source to who eats it. The arrow is pointing to who eats it. So if I'm looking, let's say at that, it says animal plankton. And I'm like, I don't know what animal plankton eat. Well, look, if there's an arrow pointing to the animal plankton, then if I follow it backwards, so if I'm looking here, here is an arrow that's pointing to the animal plankton, then I know that the energy from the algae plankton is consumed and eaten by the animal plankton. So that tells me that animal plankton eat algae. And if you're like, I don't know if algae is a plant or not, then you can always Google it as well. So use the resources available to you. But it's the arrows are pointing food source to who eats it. Continuing down the list, this is just some review. You're arranging these in order from smallest the smallest category to the largest category. Once again, those tutorials are there to help you. And then last and certainly not least, you're going to go ahead and complete a little short food chain by putting the food sources in order of how the energy flows through the food chain. The last part of your assignment this week is that it's going to challenge you to find your own ecosystem photograph, post it in there, and then go ahead and label out the different roles in the ecosystem. And there is a video that helps explain that much better detail right there. All right, email me with any questions you guys have. Have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you all at our Google Meets.